The air was thick with smoke, and the sky was cracked like broken glass. In the middle of the burned-out market, people walked past broken stalls and shattered windows. No one noticed the slave. She was lying in the mud near a collapsed tent, curled up like a forgotten animal. Her hair was stiff with dust, her skin fully covered in dry dirt and old blood. She didn't move, didn't speak, just breathed softly like she was afraid to be alive. Around her, slavers laughed as they counted credits, shoving other captives into cages. But no one wanted the muddy girl. "She's useless," one of them said, kicking some dirt near her body. "Filthy creature, probably dead already." Davis, a human engineer from Earth, had come to the outpost looking for spare parts. He had seen war, seen horror, but something about that silent girl made him stop walking. She was barely breathing, her chest rising so slowly it looked like she might vanish. Her hands were small, shaking in the cold mud. "Who is she?" Davis asked a trader nearby. The man snorted. "Nobody, just trash left behind. You want her? Take her. No one's gonna pay a credit for that thing." Davis looked again, this time closer. Her eyes opened just a little when she heard him, golden irises glowing under all that grime. He stepped forward slowly, kneeling beside her. She flinched, expecting pain, but Davis didn't touch her. He took off his jacket and gently placed it over her. She didn't speak, but her eyes never left his face. He stood up and lifted her in his arms, surprised at how light she was. Some people nearby stared, others laughed, but Davis didn't care. He had no plan, no reason to save her. But something inside him whispered, "This one is not meant to die." Here, the girl made no sound as he carried her back to his small ship. Her body was freezing, soaked in mud and shame. Inside the ship, he placed her on a padded bench and turned on the heating unit. She still didn't speak, just looked around silently like a beaten animal. Davis filled a small bowl with clean water and brought it close. He dipped a cloth into the bowl and gently wiped her face. The mud came off in layers, revealing bruises. Underneath, her skin was not gray like he expected, but smooth and faintly glowing, almost like soft moonlight. He cleaned her arms next, removing more dirt, more dried blood, more sadness. Her lips parted slightly, and she whispered, "Why?" Davis blinked, then smiled softly, because someone should. Her lips trembled. Not knowing whether to cry or smile, he didn't ask questions, didn't demand anything, just kept cleaning her. For the first time in what felt like years, she wasn't being hit, sold, or ignored. She was being seen. More of her skin showed now. And Davis noticed thin markings along her neck and collarbone. They weren't scars, they were symbols. Drawn like tattoos, but shining faintly with power. The girl looked at him, and her voice broke again. "They said I was nothing." Davis wiped mud from her cheek and whispered, "They lied." She closed her eyes, exhausted, and fell asleep wrapped in his coat. Davis leaned back, watching her. Something told him this was the beginning of something much bigger than he could understand. Outside the ship, a new storm rolled in, covering the land in wind and darkness, but inside, warmth filled the air. And for one forgotten soul, hope had returned, not through gold, not through war, but through one kind hand, and that hand had just touched a fallen star in disguise. The silence in the ship was deep, broken only by the soft hum of the heater. Zura, as Davis now called her, still hadn't said more than a few words. She lay on the bench, wrapped in his old jacket, eyes half open, not fully awake, and not fully asleep either. Davis sat nearby, fixing a damaged circuit panel. But his eyes often drifted toward her. The girl was different, too quiet, too still, too fragile, and yet something about her felt powerful. He had seen many slaves before broken, Angry, wild, but she was none of those. She was calm like the eye of a storm. When the ship rocked slightly due to the cold winds outside, she didn't even blink. Davis poured warm water into a small metal basin, steam rising gently. He dipped a clean cloth in it, wrung it out, then walked over to her. "I'm going to clean the rest of the mud," he said softly, not sure if she would allow it. Zura didn't move, but her eyes flicked to his face and then slowly closed. A silent yes. He knelt beside her, dipped the cloth again, and gently wiped her arms and shoulders. More of her skin appeared smooth, glowing faintly like starlight trapped under pale silk. As the grime disappeared, strange curved lines began to show. They weren't just tattoos. They were alive, moving slowly, lighting up under the warmth of the cloth. Davis paused, confused. "You're not normal," he whispered. Her lips parted slightly. "I know," she murmured, barely above a breath. He continued cleaning, moving down to her hands, her fingers twitching from the warmth. She was warming up, waking up. Suddenly, the lights above flickered, buzzing once. Then again. Davis looked up, then back at her. Zura's skin glowed brighter now, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The heater clicked louder, and even the ship's AI made a soft chime, confused by the sudden rise in ambient energy. "What are you?" Davis asked, not in fear, but curiosity. Zura opened her eyes slowly. Something they feared. She whispered, something they wanted to erase. Davis stared at her as the glow settled back into her skin. He helped her sit up slowly, and for the first time, she held the bowl of warm water in her own hands. She dipped her fingers in, just barely, and watched the ripples with deep focus. "Water," she said softly, like the word was sacred. "They gave me nothing but cold stones." She brought a single drop to her lips, and as it touched her tongue, her shoulders trembled. It was not just water, it was life, memory, and dignity. Returning to her, Davis sat beside her, silent, letting her take her time. She looked around the ship, her eyes stopping at every blinking light, every button, every smooth surface. "I used to fly something like this," she said, surprising him. "But it was bigger, full of light, full of song." Davis asked. She nodded. "My people sang to their ships, and they sang back." He didn't know what to say. But his heart beat faster. This girl wasn't just a random slave. She was someone from a world far above this one. He suddenly felt small. But Zura smiled at him gently. "You didn't look at me like trash," she said. "Even when I was nothing but mud, you were never nothing," Davis replied, almost angry at the idea. They were just blind. She reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist lightly. The touch was warm, electric, like sparks dancing across skin. In that moment, something shifted in the room. She was no longer a broken thing on a bench. She was someone reclaiming her shape, her mind, her light. Outside, the storm howled against the hull, but inside, it was peaceful. Zura leaned back, her voice soft but clear. "If you had not come that day, I would have vanished in that mud." Davis looked at her, and for a long moment, neither said a word. Then he stood, walked to the small kitchen unit, and brought her real food, warm, simple, and human. She stared at it like a miracle, then took a bite. Tears welled in her eyes, not from the taste, but from the kindness. Not because it was food, but because it was offered without cruelty. Zura ate slowly, each bite waking her body more. Davis watched her, his thoughts racing. She was more than what she appeared, and he knew. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, he was now a part of her story. Whether the galaxy liked it or not, the ship drifted through quiet space, far from any patrol routes or scanners. Davis checked the systems again. No trackers, no alerts. Just empty stars and silence. But inside the ship, something was changing. Zura lay resting in the bunk, wrapped in a clean blanket. Her skin no longer hidden under filth. Her glow had returned soft at first, like a candle under water, then brighter. As time passed, Davis had never seen anything like it. Her skin pulsed with patterns. Glowing lines that moved across her arms, chest, and neck like living ink. They shifted color with her breath, blue when calm, violet when deep in thought. He didn't want to ask too many questions. Not yet. Instead, he observed and waited. Then, it happened. The lights flickered again, but not randomly this time. They responded to her when she opened her eyes. The ship's dashboard screens lit up, even though he hadn't touched a single control. She sat up slowly and looked at him. "You need to shield the engine core," she said calmly, her voice stronger now. "It's leaking radiation." Davis blinked, confused. "What? How do you?" She pointed to a blinking red light on the far side of the panel that he hadn't noticed. When he checked it, she was right. The leak was minor, but real. "How did you know that?" he asked, turning to her. Zora smiled faintly. "Your ship speaks louder than it should." That was when Davis realized something else. She wasn't just glowing. She was connected. Later that night, as she lay asleep, her skin began to hum softly. Not with sound, but with energy. It made the room warmer, more alive, like standing near an old tree that remembered things. Davis couldn't sleep. He watched her from the doorway. Puzzled and curious, his AI assistant Hallie finally broke the silence. "User," it said. "Subject Zura emits energy levels matching Class 7 biosignatures." Davis frowned. "What does that mean?" Hallie paused, then replied, "She's not a normal humanoid." The next morning, Zura woke up without fear in her eyes. Instead, she looked focused, aware of herself. Aware of everything around her, she walked into the control room barefoot. Her glow soft and steady. "I remember now," she said, looking out the window. "My mother used to sing to our ships. Our ships would answer back." Davis stayed silent, listening. "We weren't just pilots," she continued. "We were chosen, bonded with living machines." Davis's eyes widened. "Living machines." Zura nodded. "You call them AIs. But ours were different. Our ships had heartbeats, memories, names. They chose us, not the other way around." She turned and faced him fully. "I was bonded to one once, but when my people fell, they destroyed my ship. My connection broke." Davis could see the pain in her voice. Not just of loss, but of silence. "I've been numb since then," she whispered, "until I touch this ship. This one listens." She stepped closer to the console and pressed her hand flat on it. The ship's screen flashed with unreadable symbols for a moment, ancient glyphs that made no sense to him. Hallie spoke up again. Unidentified language detected. Zura smiled. "It remembers." Just a little. Davis looked between her and the ship, unsure what he was witnessing. He was a salvager, not a mystic, not a prophet. But this girl, this glowing girl, was rewriting the rules around him. Later that day, Zora walked around the ship barefoot, whispering softly in a language Davis didn't understand. Wherever she walked, the systems ran smoother, the lights steadier, the engines quieter. It was like she was healing the ship just by being near it. "Your ship is tired," she said that evening, "but loyal." Davis laughed, unsure what else to say. "Like me then?" She looked at him for a long time. "You're more than loyal," she whispered. "You're kind. No one's been kind to me in a very long time." She reached out and touched the wall of the ship again, and for a second, the entire structure seemed to sigh in relief. The air inside warmed. The light dimmed to a calm gold. It felt like the ship itself was breathing again. Davis sat down, watching her. "I don't know what you are," he said honestly, "but I'm glad I found you." Zora turned, her eyes glowing now not from power, but from emotion. "No," she said softly. You didn't find me. I called to you. And you were the only one who heard. The stars outside were calm, quiet, endless, but inside Davis's ship, something else was stirring. Zura had fallen asleep hours ago, curled in the warm corner of the sleeping chamber, her skin dim, her breath slow and deep. Davis was still awake, sitting at the control console, half watching the readings, half watching her. Ever since she touched the ship's systems, everything ran smoother, faster, stronger. But something in her eyes still bothered him. Not fear, not pain, but something deeper, hidden. A kind of storm she hadn't yet released. Suddenly, a soft cry echoed through the ship. Davis stood up at once, rushing toward her room. He stopped in the doorway, heart pounding. Zura was moving, not awake, not asleep, trapped somewhere in between. Her body trembled, fingers twitching, her mouth whispering. Words he couldn't understand. No. Mother, don't leave me. Her eyes snapped open, glowing bright gold, but they saw nothing around her. She sat up, breathing fast, chest rising and falling like she had just run for miles. Davis moved closer. Zura, you're safe. It's just a dream, but she shook her head. Hard, not a dream, she said. A memory. She placed her hands over her face. Trying to calm herself, he waited in silence, giving her time, space. Then she spoke, her voice breaking like glass under pressure. I was 10 when it started, she whispered. Our city was in the clouds. We thought we were untouchable. My mother ruled with wisdom, not fear. She was kind. Too kind. Davis listened, every word cutting deeper. They came from below, she said. Machines. But not like yours, silent, sharp, with red eyes and black minds. They ripped through our guards, reached the palace in hours. I watched from the throne steps as they stabbed my mother through the chest. Her voice cracked, her hands clenched tightly around the blanket. They killed her in front of me. While the high court begged for their lives, Davis stepped forward. But she raised her hand gently. She wanted to finish this. I tried to run, she said, but they caught me. They put a mask on my face, one that stopped my glow. I became invisible, a thing to be traded, beaten, forgotten. She looked up, tears in her eyes. And they never said my name again. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Like a shield, Davis sat across from her, not saying anything. Just being there, she stared into the wall like it showed her a window to the past. They told everyone I died, she whispered, even spread a fake story about my body being burned in the palace. But I was alive, hidden in chains, passed between merchants like a trinket with no value. She looked at him then, truly looked, until you. Davis felt something heavy in his chest, not pity, not sadness, something stronger. He had pulled her out of the mud, but he didn't know he had pulled her out of hell. Zura wiped her face and gave a small smile. It's strange, she said. Your ship is so quiet, so peaceful, when I sleep here. I remember things I'd buried. She pressed a hand to her chest, where a glowing line pulsed softly. This mark, she said, was only supposed to awaken if I found safe ground again, and now it's awake. Davis finally asked the question he had been holding for days. Zura, who are you really? She didn't speak right away, but her eyes glowed again, calm, steady, royal. My full name is Zura Tell of the House Liamir. She said, daughter of the Empress Lyra, keeper of the sky flame. I am heir to a fallen empire. Davis stared at her in silence. The girl he had found in mud, who barely whispered, who flinched at touch, was once a princess. He laughed softly, shaking his head. And I thought I was just helping a lost girl. Zura smiled. You did, she said. But I am not lost anymore. A low alert beeped on the console, breaking the moment. Davis got up and checked it, eyes narrowing. Someone just pinged our old landing site. He said, encrypted signal. Zura stood up, her body still trembling slightly, but her eyes clear. "They know I'm alive now," she said. "And they'll—" "Come." Davis turned to her. "Then we run." She nodded, but added softly, "No, not forever. Soon, we stop running and I take back everything they stole." The message came at midnight, hidden in static. Davis sat alone at the pilot's console, watching stars blur past as the ship cruised silently through unclaimed space. Suddenly, a red light blinked on the screen, unusual. Coded, not from any station he trusted, he tapped the screen. And the signal cracked through his earpiece. A voice, deep and robotic, spoke two words that froze his breath. "Asset located, Davis." Leaned back slowly, heart pounding. He looked over his shoulders, or was asleep again, her head resting near the engine bulkhead. Her skin was glowing faintly, like always. But her expression was peaceful. She had no idea someone had just confirmed her location. He turned back to the message, hit decrypt, and read the full text. "Bounty reactivated. Full reward to any faction retrieving subject. Liamir, alive or in pieces." The bounty was real, and worse, global. Every major trade ring, mercenary crew, and bounty guild would now be hunting them. Davis sat in silence, staring at the message. He could run, turn off the ship's beacon, change name and direction again, or he could turn her in. He leaned his elbows on the console, pressing his hands into his eyes, ashamed at the thought. The reward was beyond anything he had ever seen, enough to buy a planet. Enough to buy peace, a future, a new life far from this. But then he looked back at her, curled in sleep, trusting him, breathing softly. She hadn't just been thrown away by her people. She had been hunted, silenced, erased, and all she had now was him. Davis stood up quietly and walked to the med locker. He opened a hidden drawer beneath the supplies and took out an old energy rifle. It still had 3 full charges, not for Zura, for anyone coming after her. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered, "Behind him, you saw it, didn't you?" He turned fast. Zura was standing at the doorframe, barefoot, eyes glowing gold. Her face was calm. But there was something behind her voice, something wounded. Davis nodded slowly. "I saw it." She walked toward him, never looking away. "And?" Davis placed the rifle down and spoke firmly. "We're not running, but we're not surrendering either. You're not going back to chains." She blinked, surprised, then smiled faintly. "I thought you might leave." He raised a brow. "Then you don't know me very well." Zora stepped closer, her hands at her sides. "I was prepared to walk away. I didn't want you to die for someone like me." "You're not someone like anything," Davis said. "You're the only one of your kind left, and you're worth fighting for." She sat down, pulled the screen toward her, and began entering commands at speeds Davis couldn't follow. "What are you doing?" he asked, sending false trails. She said, "Ghost signals that lead bounty hunters away from us, but it won't last long. Sooner or later, someone clever will find the truth." She looked up at him. "We need to disappear, not just hide. We need to vanish from the maps." Davis crossed his arms, thinking, then smiled. "I know just the place." He entered coordinates into the nav system. A sector known only to smugglers and old pirates. A gas cloud that blocked signals and fried scanners perfect. But it came with a cost. Rogue worlds, ship thieves, chaos, no rules. Still, better than a royal execution. As the ship jumped to warp, Zora turned to him again. "You had a choice. You could have sold me. You still can." Davis looked at her like she was crazy. "You really think I'd trade you for credits?" She tilted her head. "Others have." He shrugged. "Then they were fools." Zora stepped closer and gently reached for his hand. Her fingers were warmer than before, alive with energy. "Then I owe you everything," she said. Davis shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. But if we're going into the storm together, I'll watch your back, you watch mine, Zura smiled. This time with something new in her eyes, not pain, not fear, loyalty, maybe even trust. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared once two ships detected entering the same vector behind them. Bounty hunters already tracking the scent. Davis locked his jaw. Hang on, he growled. Zura turned toward the weapons panel, her eyes glowing brighter than before. The ship dove into the gas cloud at full burn, light twisting around them. Outside, hunters gave chase, but inside, a girl once sold for nothing now stood beside a man ready to risk everything. And both of them knew this was only the beginning. The rogue planet had no name. It's just a glow blue and violet from the gases swirling. Above it, it was a place where maps ended and rules didn't matter. Where ships with missing parts limped in and either came out stronger, or it never came out at all. Davis's ship drifted into the dark orbit like a wounded bird, hidden by signal jammers and thick cloud cover. Inside, Zura sat at the console, watching the planet spin slowly beneath them. Her face was clean now, her hair brushed back and braided behind her head, but more than her body, her spirit had changed. She sat upright, calm, glowing not from energy, but from purpose. Davis came in, holding a bundle of old clothes and gear. These are from the storage lockers, he said. Most of them are junk, but I think you'll find something that fits. Zura unwrapped the bundle and smiled softly. The outfit was old, stitched together from different worlds, but it was clean, warm, and not made of chains. She stood and stepped behind the curtain near the engine core, dressing quietly. When she came out, Davis stared for a second longer than he meant to. Gone was the shaking girl from the mud. Before him stood someone proud, someone royal, even in patched clothes. Zura adjusted the belt at her waist and nodded. I'm ready now. Davis handed her a small communicator. You sure about this? Zura looked down at it and then back up. If I'm to reclaim anything, she said, I have to show them I still live. Not just to the galaxy, she added, but to myself. They had found an old rebel hideout in the planet's northern zone. The base was buried in cliffs, invisible from the air. Inside were people, not many, but enough. Aliens, humans, outcasts, who had once served the Lyamir royal fleet. They had gone quiet after the Empire's fall, but they had not forgotten. When Davis's ship landed near the base entrance, the guards aimed weapons at them. Zura stepped forward before Davis could speak. She pulled back the sleeve of her coat, revealing the glowing pattern on her forearm. Not just a design, it was a mark, a living royal seal. The guards froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. One of them whispered, It's her. She's alive. The base door slid open with a groan, and they were welcomed in without a single word. Inside, older faces looked at her, some with tears, some with disbelief. An old alien woman, blind in one eye, stepped forward slowly and fell to one knee. My lady, she said, voice shaking, we thought you perished in the flames. Zura reached out and lifted the woman to her feet. I did, she whispered. But now I rise. Davis watched the scene quietly. Standing in the background, he had seen many things in his travels, but nothing like this. Zura stood in the center of the room, her clean form wrapped in soft light, her voice steady. I am not here to demand power, she said. I am not here to wear a crown. I am here because we were all broken, and I want to rebuild one by one. The rebels in the room came forward, bowing, kneeling, pledging again to a girl who had once been mud, and now stood like a flame that could not be put out. Later that night, Davis sat with her near a fire in the base's main chamber. He passed her a cup of hot liquid spiced from a root grown on the planet. Zura took a sip and smiled. You know, she said, the first time you touched my face, I thought I would disappear. Davis looked at her, confused. Why? Because, she said, it felt too kind to be real. He didn't reply. just looked into the flames. Zura turned toward him, her eyes steady now. "I don't want to run forever," she said. "I want to stand with you." Davis met her gaze. "Surprised me," he asked. "I'm just a ship mechanic. You were the one who saw me beneath the dirt." She replied, "You're not just a mechanic. You're the first man who made me feel human again." She placed her hand on his, gently but firmly. "You cleaned my body." "Yes," she said. "But more than that?" "You restored my name." Davis swallowed, not knowing what to say, so he said nothing, and simply held her hand in return. Outside, the planet remained cold and wild, but inside that room, a new alliance was born, not forged in battle, but in trust. Zura wasn't just a survivor now. She was a symbol, clean of the mud, but rich in memory, and standing beside her, a man who had seen gold beneath the filth. The sky above the royal capital had turned dark, not from clouds, not from night, but from fear. Ships hovered low across the skyline. Soldiers lined the streets, and whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire in the palace once ruled by the Empress Lyra. A false general now sat on the throne. His name was Kale Varan, the man who betrayed Zira's mother. He thought the bloodline was dead, erased, forgotten. He thought wrong. In the shadow of a shattered moon, Zora's rebel fleet broke through the perimeter. Smaller ships, older weapons, but hearts that burned hotter than plasma. At the center of them all was Davis's ship, reforged and glowing, now linked to Zora's pulse. She stood in the cockpit, dressed in battle-worn robes, her markings fully lit, not as decoration, but as proof. Davis sat at the controls, his hand resting near hers. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. Zora looked out the window, her face calm. "Yes," she whispered. "I do. This city is where I lost everything," she added, "but it's also where I start again." The ship touched down on the palace steps. Guards swarmed but stopped the moment she stepped out. Her glow was too familiar, too ancient. Some dropped their weapons and knelt right there. Others froze, unsure if they were staring at a ghost. Zura didn't shout, didn't command. She walked forward slowly, proudly, her steps echoing on the marble floor. Inside, General Kale Varone stood from the throne, eyes wide. "You," he growled. "You were dead." Zora stopped before him, only a few meters away. "No," she said. "I was buried, but you forgot one thing." "Kale, we don't stay buried." Davis stood behind her, watching the room, every hand near a weapon. Kale laughed coldly. "You have no army." Zora raised her hand, and behind her, the crowd of old guards and loyalists stepped in. "You were saying?" she said calmly. Kale drew his blade and honor sword, stolen from the royal armory. He pointed it at her chest. "You think you can take back this throne?" Zura didn't flinch. "I don't want your throne," she said. "I want justice." In a flash, Kale charged forward, but Zora moved like lightning, grabbing his wrist, twisting and slamming him to the ground. His blade clattered across the floor. Gasps filled the hall. Zura stood over him, breathing steady. She looked down at the man who had once made her a slave. "You took everything from me," she whispered. "Now I take back my name." Davis stepped beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. She turned to the crowd and raised her voice. "I am Zuratel Liamir," she declared, "daughter of the flame, rightful heir, and I have returned." A silence followed, heavy, deep, like the world holding its breath. Then one voice shouted, "Long live the heir!" Another followed, then another, until the entire palace echoed with the chant, "Long live Zuratel." Kale was dragged away in chains. The throne was left empty, not claimed, but respected. Zora didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, she walked out to the palace balcony, looking down at the city. Crowds were gathering, voices rising, hope blooming like fire in dry grass. Davis Came to stand beside her. You did it, he said. Zura shook her head. We did. She turned to him, her eyes soft, glowing gently now, from power, but from peace. You pulled me from the dirt. She said, you gave me warmth, when the galaxy gave me chains. Davis smiled. All I did was offer a jacket. She laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. No, she said. You offered me a future as the sun broke through the clouds. The city began to sing old songs, royal songs. Children threw petals in the streets, and bells rang from towers long silent. Zura stepped back inside, walking past the throne. She didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, she turned to Davis and asked quietly, would you stay? He looked surprised. Here? With you? She nodded. Not as a servant, not as a knight, but as the man who reminded me I was never meant to live in chains. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Always, he said. She reached out, took his hand, and together they stood side by side. No longer alone, the mud was gone, the chains broken. What remained was the light, and the man who helped it shine again.